Tonight, you are going to do something extraordinary. You are going to find a soft surface, lie down, close your eyes, and become completely unconscious for approximately 8 hours. You will stop monitoring your environment. You will stop responding to most stimuli. Your muscles will relax to the point of paralysis. Your brain will enter states so different from waking consciousness that they constitute, in some meaningful sense, an entirely different mode of existence. And you will do all of this voluntarily, alone, in a dark room, behind a closed door, without a second thought. For most of human history, this would have been an act of almost suicidal recklessness. Sleep is the most vulnerable state a human being can occupy. You cannot run from a predator while asleep. You cannot fight while asleep. You cannot call for help, navigate, plan, or make decisions while asleep. For the entirety of our evolutionary history, the 300,000 years before electric light, before locked doors, before the concept of a house that a large predator could not enter, going to sleep meant surrendering every defense you had to a world that was actively trying to kill you. Every night. For your entire life. And yet sleep is not optional. It never has been. You cannot choose not to sleep any more than you can choose not to breathe. The need is absolute, the pressure is relentless, and the consequences of deprivation are catastrophic. After 3 days without sleep, the human brain begins to hallucinate. After 11 days, it is not clear that survival is possible. Sleep deprivation is used as a form of torture precisely because it is so effective. It dismantles the mind faster than almost anything else. So ancient humans faced a problem with no solution. They had to sleep, and sleeping was dangerous. What they did about that problem, the strategies they developed, the social arrangements they invented, the biology they evolved, is one of the most revealing windows into what our species actually is and how we actually work. And almost none of it looks like what you do tonight. The idea that humans are supposed to sleep in a single continuous 8-hour block, alone, in the dark, in silence, is not ancient wisdom. It is not biological fact. It is a product of the Industrial Revolution, artificial lighting, and roughly 200 years of historical accident. For the vast majority of human history, sleep looked nothing like this. And the evidence comes from an unlikely source, historical documents from medieval Europe, the sleep patterns of contemporary hunter-gatherer groups, and a remarkable series of experiments conducted in the 1990s by psychiatrist Thomas Wehr at the National Institute of Mental Health. Wehr took a group of volunteers and removed artificial light from their lives for a month. Without electric light, something unexpected happened. Within a few weeks, their sleep patterns changed completely. They stopped sleeping in a single 8-hour block. Instead, they began sleeping in 2 separate periods of approximately 4 hours each, with a 1 to 2 hour period of quiet wakefulness in between. This pattern, first sleep, a waking interval, second sleep, appeared spontaneously, without instruction, in every participant. Weir then went looking for this pattern in historical records. He found it everywhere. Medieval European documents are full of references to first sleep and second sleep as ordinary, unremarkable features of nightly life. People woke between their 2 sleep periods, lay in bed thinking or praying or talking to their partners, and then returned to sleep. This was so normal that it required no explanation in any of the texts. It was simply assumed. The single consolidated block of sleep that modern humans consider natural is, historically speaking, the anomaly. It appeared when artificial light extended the evening, pushed bedtime later, compressed sleep time, and forced the 2 natural sleep periods to merge. You may have experienced this yourself without knowing what it was. Waking at 2 or 3 in the morning feeling oddly alert and calm, unable to fall back asleep for an hour or so, then returning to a deep sleep until morning. This is not insomnia. This is your ancestral sleep pattern trying to reassert itself through the compression of modern life. The most important thing to understand about how ancient humans handled sleep is that they did not handle it alone. The individual sleeping in private, isolated from others, is an extraordinarily recent invention. For the vast majority of human history, sleep was a collective activity. Hunter-gatherer groups slept together, not in separate bedrooms, not in separate houses, but in close physical proximity, the same shelter, the same sleeping space, bodies near bodies. Anthropologist David Sampson has studied sleep patterns in contemporary forager communities and found something that changes everything we think we know about the purpose of sleep schedules. In these communities, individual sleep times are staggered. Not everyone goes to sleep at the same time. Not everyone wakes at the same time. At almost any point during the night, at least one person in the group is awake. Sampson calls this the sentinel hypothesis, the natural variation in individual sleep timing. The fact that some people are night owls and some are early risers, that some sleep lightly and some sleep deeply, that sleep becomes lighter with age, is not a bug in human biology. It is a feature. It evolved precisely because a group in which everyone slept simultaneously was a group that was completely defenseless for hours at a time. The variation in sleep timing meant that the group always had coverage, always had someone awake or nearly awake to respond to threat. The person who woke in the night was not suffering from insomnia. They were doing their biological job. The elderly member of the group who slept lightly and woke repeatedly was not experiencing a sleep disorder. They were the sentinel, providing coverage during the hours when the deeper sleepers were most vulnerable. Fire played a crucial role in all of this. The discovery and control of fire, which our ancestors had mastered by at least 400,000 years ago, transformed the geometry of sleep. A fire, at the center of a sleeping group, did several things simultaneously. It provided warmth, it provided light that predators were reluctant to approach. It created a social focal point that organized the group's sleeping arrangement around a protected center. And it required maintenance. Someone had to tend the fire, which meant someone was always awake, which reinforced the sentinel pattern. The sleeping group arranged itself around the fire in a way that maximized protection. The most vulnerable members, infants, the sick, the elderly, slept at the center, closest to the fire and furthest from the perimeter. The able-bodied adults slept at the edges, where they could respond to threats. This arrangement, practiced for hundreds of thousands of years, left traces in modern human behavior that most people have never thought to examine. Your preference for sleeping with your back to a wall, your discomfort sleeping in the center of an open space, your instinct to check a room before sleeping in it. These are not quirks. They are ancient security protocols still running in modern hardware. Here is the part that most people never consider. What was the subjective experience of ancient sleep? What did it feel like to drift off in a world without the noise-canceling walls, the blackout curtains, the white noise machines, the temperature-controlled rooms that modern sleepers take for granted? The answer is that ancient sleep was almost certainly lighter, more interrupted, and more socially embedded than anything a modern person has experienced. The sounds of the environment did not stop when ancient humans closed their eyes. The fire crackled. Animals moved in the dark beyond the perimeter. Other group members shifted, breathed, occasionally spoke. The boundary between sleeping and waking was more permeable, more fluid, more continuously negotiated than the hard stop we experience when we turn off the light and close the door. Jerome Siegel at UCLA has studied sleep in 3 contemporary hunter-gatherer groups, the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of Namibia, and the Tsimane of Bolivia, and found that their sleep looks dramatically different from Western sleep in several ways. They average only 6.5 hours of sleep per night, considerably less than the 8 hours modern sleep science recommends. They do not have fixed bedtimes. They go to sleep when the temperature drops and wake when it rises, suggesting that temperature, not light, is the primary driver of their sleep-wake cycle. They nap occasionally but not consistently. And crucially, they report almost no insomnia. In these communities, the concept of lying awake unable to sleep, one of the most common complaints in the industrialized world, is essentially unknown. The chronic insomnia epidemic of the modern world is not, it turns out, a product of stress or screens or caffeine. Though all of these contribute, it is, at its deepest level, a product of the mismatch between the sleep environment modern humans have created and the sleep biology that evolution built. We sleep alone in silence in the dark at fixed times in an unchanging temperature, and our bodies, designed for the fire, for the group, for the variable night, for the 2-period sleep cycle, for the permeable boundary between sleep and waking, rebel. Here's where we land. The way you sleep tonight, alone in the dark, in silence, in a continuous 8-hour block at a fixed time, is, by the standards of the overwhelming majority of human history, a bizarre aberration. It is not natural. It is not optimal. It is not what your biology was built for. It is the product of a very specific historical moment, the invention of artificial light, the construction of private sleeping spaces, the industrialization of the work schedule, and the medicalizing of sleep into something that can be prescribed and optimized and measured. Your ancient ancestor did not lie awake at 2 in the morning worrying about their insomnia. They lay awake at 2 in the morning because that was their waking interval between first sleep and second sleep. And they used it to think, or talk quietly to the person beside them, or listen to the sounds of the night, or stoke the fire. They were not failing at sleep. They were doing exactly what their biology designed them to do. The sleep disorders that plague the modern world, the insomnia, the fragmented sleep, the inability to fall asleep, The middle-of-the-night wakefulness that feels like a malfunction are in large part disorders produced by trying to force an ancient biological system into a modern box that was never built to contain it. We took a social, variable, fire-lit, two-period, lightly waking, collectively organized activity and turned it into a solitary, silent, dark, continuous, rigidly scheduled obligation. And then we wondered why it so often goes wrong. The cure, if there is one, is not a better mattress or a sleep tracking app or a prescription. It is closer to what your ancestors had: a group, a fire, a permeable night, and the understanding that waking in the dark is not a failure. It is a feature. It is the sentinel in you, still watching, still doing the job it was built to do, in a world that no longer needs it, but has not yet figured out how to let it rest. That's all for today. Please donate or subscribe to fund the next video.